Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on AI in action, building a course live from idea to execution using AI. Very excited to get started. We're about a minute. Well, when I started talking, we were a minute early. By the time I was done, we're right on time. Thanks, everyone, for joining. This is really a phenomenal turnout that we have for this webinar that just came out of a random idea between Patrick and I. We did a podcast together on the topic of AI, and then Patrick had put out this really cool article just outlining what he was able to, building a course using Gemini. And we realized, this is the type of information that people are looking for. We feel people really want to see, show me hands-on as you can get, how I can start doing AI, because a lot of this talk in AI has been conceptual. And so we're excited. I also asked, bear with us, we're doing this live. You're going to see things break, I'm sure. Like that's the whole beauty of it. But also let this be interactive. You have questions, we want to answer those. It doesn't matter, when, if we're in the middle of the demo or whatever it is. Use the Q&A, use the chat, whichever one works best for you, and we'll get to as many questions as we can within the time. We're going to go ahead and get started now that we've got given people an extra minute to bop between meetings, I'm sure. So again, this is really what we're focused on, AI in action. Just a tiny word about Infopro, the sponsor of this. For those that aren't aware, they're full service learning and development organization, really from advisory through content development, delivery, managed learning services. Happy to announce, while this Brandon Hall Award was for 2024, they just announced the awards for 2025, and I think we won 35 or so awards this year. So we'll get this slide updated, but that just came out on Friday. So happy to see some of that. If anybody is interested in Infopro, there's lots of places you can collect. But this webinar is not about Infopro. I'll do a second introduction of myself, then I'll let Patrick introduce him. I'm Nolan Howard. I'm the Senior Vice President of Infopro Learning. Spent about 15 or so years in the corporate learning space, led various different roles from launching an LMS product and an NLXP product now within Infopro Learning, leading our marketing org. I run a podcast that I talked about, which is where I met Patrick, where I interview L&D leaders as well. So that's a little bit about me. And again, why I'm on this is I have really focused a lot of what I do now in the AI space and helping develop that product and that solution set for Infopro Learning, which has allowed me to present and to be kind of at the front lines of a lot of this work on AI and L&D. Patrick, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Nolan. Great to see you all here today and see some familiar names in the chat. So really, thank you all for joining. So my name is Patrick Peterson. I'm a project director at Duke Corporate Education, which provides leadership and learning services to corporations globally. We have offices. Our headquarters office is in Durham, North Carolina. I, however, reside in our DC office, our Washington, DC office. But we have organizations and teams located in London, Johannesburg, Singapore, and then on the West Coast as well. My background a little bit, I've spent more than 15 years in learning and development with a significant amount of that focused on learning technology. My passion is using learning to transform the way that people work and to make work better for humans and make humans better at work. The way that I do that is through immersive technologies. I have a background. I previously delivered some augmented and virtual reality learning solutions to a selection of public sector clients. For the last couple of years, I've really been focused on using AI. I believe that AI can be an effective tool to transform the instructional design process, make your teams of instructional designers and learning professionals better and faster at their work. It also gives them the opportunity to focus on the most high value added tasks that they can deliver. But to do that, we have to use these tools appropriately, and we have to separate some of the hype from the reality. So really excited to showcase some tools here with you today. As Nolan mentioned, when I was doing some tests earlier before this session, I was getting some errors with one of the tools. So we are going to be doing this live. I do have backups in case the live product does not work in the way that it's expected. But that's, I think, going to be a good lesson that I would love to sort of cover in this session around how do you integrate these tools into your workflow, not how do these tools replace what you're doing. So really excited to dive in and appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today.
Wonderful. And if I remember right, Patrick, didn't you use AI to help create the picture, the headshot that we're
I did.
seeing?
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes, that's a good point. So that is actually a photo of me. I mean, well, I guess it is a photo of me, but this photo is I used an AI headshot generator. Uh, uh, because I was really curious about it. And sometimes I do this thing where there's an interest, art is both a depiction of reality, but it is not an exact replica of reality. And what I like about this photo is that I feel like it describes me as I see myself, not necessarily how my iPhone camera captures me. I really like this product. The product that I use was really helpful. I did, looking through the results of some of those photos, though, there were some duds. There were some things that did not necessarily work, but that's what working with AI is like. That's right.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk a tiny bit about the agenda, then we'll get us kicked off here. And welcome for those. We've had a lot of people just joining the last couple minutes. Welcome to the webinar. Again, feel free to leverage chat and Q&A. This will be a very interactive session. We're going to cover these, kind of 5 things. We're going to really do a little bit of an overview of generative AI. That's shortened as Gen AI. You hear people say Gen AI, generative AI, they're one and the same. We're going to do a little bit of an overview. We're going to look at it in practice, how people are using it today. A brief overview of the tools that we're going to be using today. And then we're going to get right into the demo. If we have some time after the demo, I have some other tools queued up as well that we can showcase, but that's really going to be the agenda for today and see how long that takes us. With that, I'll hand it over to Patrick. If you want to take over the screen, you can take it from
Sure.
here.
I will. Thank you, everybody. So, really excited to chat with you today. And just give me one moment. I have several windows that are currently open, so I'm going to be pivoting from multiple things. Let me share my screen. And what I'd love to do as we sort of start, and if you all just can give me a quick thumbs up or notification that you all can see the screen properly. Got it. Okay. Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate it. All right. So just maybe want to start with a quick context setter here. So, generative AI tools, particularly the things like ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and other related tools were first released to the market in the end of 2022. Since then, there's been several surveys around how are people using these tools. And so you'll see some results on the screen here. According to the Harvard Business Review, 91% of American workers have been encouraged by their bosses or their teams to use Gen AI. 75% have actually tried it. But only 16% of American workers are regularly using generative AI in their work. And I'm curious to hear your current state of AI. If you could, in the chat, use A, B, or C which sort of where you are presently. Have you been encouraged to use Gen AI but are not doing it yet? Are you using it a lot? Are you a regular user, or have you tried it once and then maybe left it behind?
So as this gets answered, I want to share my experience. I have been all of these, and I think that's probably the story arc of kind of where you go throughout there. I started at B, and I just hated it. I used Copilot right when it came out, and I just thought, man, this tool isn't really helpful. Like it's not doing what I thought it could do.
Mhm.
And then I got encouraged by our CEO. He said, listen, let me show you how I use this tool. So he encouraged me. showed me this tool called Claude, which was much, I thought gave me better answers. I also met a peer of mine who said, you know, um, my tip for using Gen AI is to keep the screen open at all times. Whatever tool you use, he goes,
Hmm.
there's three front runners, Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini. He said, if I guarantee you, if the first thing you do when you start your day is you keep that window open, you'll find things to ask it. So then I started doing it. I just said, well, okay, challenge accepted. I'll try to use it once a day. And then that led to C. So I think that's
Yeah.
probably a story arc that many have. And if we look in the chat, we have a good mix. A lot of
Yeah.
C's. Yeah.
It's a good mix, yeah. It's definitely a good mix. It's a lot of folks who have who consider themselves a regular user. And Nolan, I mean, I think to your point, that is a that is a way to discover more usage of them. I also see some folks who are A's, who are people who have not used them, who have been encouraged to use it but haven't in the past. What I see with my clients a lot. And what I just sort of read in the press is a real um, shift in the way that organizations are thinking about AI. The AI hype is big. It's real. It is something that I think is beyond the type of hype that I typically have seen in the past for similar technologies, and that's for various reasons. Some organizations are doing it with the eye of improving efficiency. Some organizations have been explicit about their desire to change staffing levels. There's all different what types of reasons for that. I think separating the marketing of AI from what it can actually do and how does it actually drive value, that's the process of the next couple years. And I will say that that is not here to date. But we all have an important role to play in that. By using these tools, by thinking about how these tools can help you do your work, it enables you to figure out what is the best use of your time when using these types of tools. So just wanted to maybe take a little bit of a moment to explain what generative AI is, because I mentioned marketing. A lot of these, if you read sort of statements from a lot of these companies and you try and watch videos and things like that, it can be a little confusing about what this tool is. Is it an assistant? Is it a super intelligence? Is it does it know all of these things? What is this thing? At its core, and I think a thing that is important to understand, it is a tool that has been built to predict relationships. And what it does specifically is it understands patterns between words. And I'm simplifying a little bit because it's not always words, but it understands patterns between different, let's use the term, like words and phrases, and can predict the next thing in the sentence. So think of it as something like, the predicting engine on your phone when you're typing a text message, or autocorrect, or other tools like that. At its core, that technology is that. So in the example on the right here, you can see, let's say that if I gave a LLM prompt, the prompt of good, and asked it to predict the next word in the sentence, it might not know what to predict. What it's looking for is the most likely pairing. If I gave the prompt good and Baltimore, those who are familiar with the musical Hairspray, might recognize that the missing word there in blue is morning. If in the next example I gave it a choice of good blank moon, well, I have a toddler at home, so for that it might know that the missing word there is night. So that's what the tool is really doing. It's predicting words. These systems have been tuned to identify the most likely word or the most likely thing that the user is asking for. Um, the problem with that tool is if it is looking for the most likely thing, um, but you really want something else, you're not going to get what you need. So it's really about kind of changing that math between what you are actually looking for and what the system itself is designed to deliver. Um, so that's sort of a quick primer on what the tool is. I think when I kind of think about, well, what does this actually mean? I think that there are some very useful tools for generative AI. It can be very helpful at summarizing content. It is good at putting unstructured content into a structure. That is something that it is particularly good at. I mentioned about patterns and I said generate new content. The key here is it requires some reference information. When you open up an LLM window, that reference information is all of the content on the internet that large language model has been trained on. You can also constrain that. You can give it a set of information, reference information to work from as well, but it is generating new content from what it already has reviewed. There are some things that Gen AI cannot do, despite what some folks may have, what marketing may say differently. It does not think in the way that we think. Generative AI tools do not natively know the difference between something that is true and something that is false. What these tools do is they understand what the most likely answer is, not and what and make decisions based on those types of predictions. A key thing, and I think a challenge that we will continue to see around understanding these perspectives as people chat with these tools. They often anthropomorphize them and assume a sense of personality to them. In many cases, some tools are explicitly designed to mimic a personality, but these things don't feel. They don't have perspectives. They don't have their own unique points of view. They are reporting back what the information that it has been trained on. Act here, some systems are able to take action on their own. They're able to execute instructions, but those instructions are either implicitly provided via the rule sets that the programmers give it or explicitly provided by you. It doesn't have the ability to act and make decisions on its own. And I think a key thing here and where you start to think about how do you balance your human workforce with with these tools, is humans are very good at, kind of gut instinct. They're good at just having a sense that they can't really articulate that something is off. Something is there, they just have that sort of, and every one of us have had that feeling where you've listened to something and you're like, that doesn't seem right, and I can't put my finger on it. Um, Interesting. There's a whole field of study in neuroscience and psychology and other fields around where does that actually come from in humans. These tools do not have that. So they don't have the ability to tell when something is off for a reason that it can't really explain. And that is a significant limitation, but it's also the opportunity for you as humans to to figure out where you focus your time and attention. Let me pause here. Nolan, curious as you see these thoughts. What are something that jumps out at you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think for me, what and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but really for me, Gen AI and instructional design, the limitations is best to just understand like the raw, a big picture of what is AI doing, what is the Gen AI doing, and I think that like the common things of what you talked about for me, if I
Mhm.
even take it one step further, I say these Gen AI tools are like a golden retriever. All they want to do is please you,
Yep.
and they're going to find any way to do that. They're going
Yeah.
to lie, steal, cheat, borrow, everything just to please you.
Yeah.
And and I think so if you understand that that's what their intention is, and again couple it with this idea of it's actually not thinking or it is doing what you are the controller of AI is not the controller of you.
Mhm.
So I think if you look at it from these two parameters of it's going to try to please me no matter what, but it's only going to do so at my request.
Yeah.
And if I look at the tools with those lenses, I realize this is, I mean, although I personally am not a huge advocate, I don't love Copilot. I think the name is probably the best name there is because it really can be your Copilot. It is
Yeah.
working with you, alongside you, but not for, but it is not doing, it is not working
It's not
without you.
you.
It's
Yeah.
not you. You have to
Yeah.
work it. It cannot
Yeah.
work you. And I think as long as once I personally understood that broad perspective of
Mhm.
it is sitting alongside me, it changed how I used it. And like somebody said recently, they were told to think of their AI tool like they are the CEO and every
Mhm.
AI agent is an employee that works for them.
Yeah.
And I thought that was
No,
another good like context.
I think that's a great point, and one that I think is really worth hitting on. What I wanted to kind of do is what does this mean for us as talent professionals, instructional designers, learning folks in the learning field. What you're seeing on this slide are examples of tasks that in a world where generative AI is widespread, what are you spending time doing less of, and what are you spending time doing more of? Um, when I look at the list of time spent less time spent on, when I look at that list, as somebody who has worked for several advised lots of different organizations on how to modernize their L&D function, the thing that I hear most common from L&D leaders is our staff are seen as order takers. We are not showing that we're driving value to the enterprise. The C-suite doesn't respect our perspectives. We are really just in a constant mode of delivery and design, delivery, and refreshes. It doesn't ever give us the time to think about things strategically. I would say Gen AI gives you an opportunity to do less of those activities that are driving some of those behavior or driving some of those challenges. So AI can be a very good can be a very good training administrator, can help people register for courses and make sure that they have their information and make sure all of that is sorted. AI can be helpful at summarizing large volumes of content so that somebody doesn't necessarily have to read thousands and thousands of pages of documents to prepare for meetings. It can help generate impact questions and survey questions and things like that. It can do those types of tasks that take a lot of time and free people up to spend more time on those strategic work or strategic tasks. A good metaphor, a good friend of mine, he is a reporter, or he's not a reporter anymore. He started his career at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution many years ago as a freelance reporter. And my friend, he was very good at writing a 700-word newspaper article every day that followed exactly the same format. It had the lead paragraph, it had the, information, it had the quotes, it had is very, very specific in a very specific format. And reporters are trained to write in a specific way, to try and use a specific structure and get content out. That's what they do. That's what they do really well. When my friend got promoted to an editor position, what he realized is the job was fundamentally different. The job wasn't you have to write all of this content. It wasn't even really you had to review all of this content. It was you have to think about the content that your teams are putting out and think about what that means in terms of making sure that the story is told in the larger and more truthful way. That difference from writer to editor, I think really describes the the role shift that happens when organizations really or when people start to use AI for more and more of their work. Um, I'm curious to hear from the group, and we're going to get to the demo shortly, but in the chat, lots of folks had said that they are frequent users in of generative AI. I'm curious to hear as you are reflecting on your experience. Feel free to drop it in the chat. what are some of the things that you are spending less time on with generative AI, and what are some of the things you're spending more time on?
Well, that's being done. One of the biggest things that I use it for is voiceover scripts. Super, super like easy. And it like doing one takes forever when you start with a
Hmm.
blank screen. Somebody called it a blinking cursor, and I was like, yeah, that's probably the best way to describe it. Like when you start with a
Yeah,
blinking cursor, oh my gosh. But when I just use generative AI and I say, here's all my information. I want to create a 90-second video script or
yeah,
video on this topic. Again, it's not going to give me the answer. It's going to give me an answer 90% there, but since I don't have that blinking cursor,
yeah.
I'm there. I'm like already close enough. Gosh, it saves me so much time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing some good thoughts coming in around Maria, appreciate your comment up here around the input of specific criteria and parameters to create a draft of what is needed.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the ADDIE approach, which we all use, whether it's, or related frameworks that are very similar in I think the fundamentals. The challenge that I've seen with a lot of instructional designers is the time that it takes to get a first draft on the table. And the ability, the challenge in iterating and iterating and iterating before putting something in front of learners or stakeholders. Um, Generative AI can help you with that because it can generate things a lot faster. And I think we're gonna see an example of that shortly. There's a couple practices. Appreciate somebody said, mentioned some things around, how do we actually use these tools? What are some of the frameworks here? I'm going to present kind of two key ideas here, two key practices. The first is providing the tool with the right source materials. Hallucinations or being confidently wrong with a response is a persistent issue with large language models. That is an issue that is not likely to go away anytime soon. For various technical reasons, that is going to be there. It's a challenge that these tools have to manage. But by providing the right reference materials, by providing the right source content, the content that you all already have, you can help really start to constrain those hallucinations into more to get something that is more accurate and complete and reflects reality. So that's one tool. The second is a prompt engineering approach. If you may have remembered that Gaussian that bell curve chart on the previous slide. Um, Prompt engineering helps get you from the most likely output that it is going to give to the most likely response that you actually want. And this is an example framework that I use and that we're going to be using in our session today. It is called CETO. What it does is instead of asking it to just generate something, you're providing more details around what you want, and how you want it delivered. A key part of this approach is the expert persona. So, Nolan, to your point earlier, these systems are designed to be golden retrievers. By asking the system to play as a different character, to play as a different role, it brings in those other characteristics and perspectives, which can often be very helpful. It is not just for the types of things where somebody says, "Oh, write me a memo as if you were a pirate." Um,
Mm.
that is a fun example, but there is actually practical ways to use those tools as well. So these are the two tools that we're going to use today. Happy to follow up with this information after our session if you'd like to reference these as well. But we're going to be working with two specific systems today. So Nolan mentioned that I use Gemini to build the course in my article. We'll continue to use Google two tools. One is Google's Notebook LM tool, and then Google Gemini, which is their large language model. I will say, there are absolutely differences among the leading providers of LLMs. So Google, OpenAI, Microsoft's Copilot, which is built with a lot of help from OpenAI, Meta has a large language model, and then there are other tools as well. Those tools are likely to expand over time. I would say I have not seen a significant enough difference in the enterprise tools that are used actually in business, to really describe what to really kind of have one over the other. There's a ton of technical questions around which tool to use for what, that are not worth getting into here. We're going to use Google, but you're welcome to do this with ChatGPT, or Claude from Anthropic, or any other tool on your as well.
And just to note, there was a question earlier, and I want to cover it. And I actually don't know Gemini out of the box because I don't use it, but I do use Notebook quite a bit. Um, I want to clear up some things on the security of these models. Usually, when we
Hmm.
look at these models, there's a couple items that kind of create red flags. The number one, probably the largest, is the model learning from what you give it and applying it to others? So if I'm talking to the bot, the agent, and then the agent learns from what I'm giving it and then goes to somebody outside of my org and gives them a better answer, that's a big concern for us,
Yeah.
really big. You're exposing your IP, you're exposing all types of information, right? Imagine putting in your price list into the document and then somebody asking, what is the price of this product? They now have that. Um,
Mhm.
most paid tools, most every paid tool that your organization would use, a large organization would use, they are going to shut that down. They are not going to allow the model to learn from you. Unpaid tools, you have to specifically figure that out. Notebook LM does not. Notebook
Mhm.
keeps all of your information for you only. It is your information. It does not learn from anybody else. Gemini, I don't know out of, but both are free. Both have a free use.
Yeah.
I don't know Gemini. I don't know, Patrick, if you know if Gemini learn. I would assume they don't because they're both
Yeah.
Google products, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I have the pro version of Google Gemini,
Oh,
for
okay. Sure.
various reasons. It is a question. It is something that I think will be driving a lot of these transformations. Uh, is is how to minimize, I think, privacy, security, data, copyright, fair use. These are, I think, core questions to these tools. They were core questions to the founding of these tools. Many of these tools were trained on materials that they were scraped from the internet. I think that there is, I think a critical, but reasonable view of these tools would ask. I think there's absolutely some, if not a lot, of copyright information in here, and that's a question that I think needs to get sorted out. For the enterprise level, I would say that's the question that's really going to be driving the the CIO, and like the
Hmm.
legal decision of which tool to use. Um, Jose, love that comment here. Um, is everybody wants better models, but nobody wants to share their data. And correct, the biggest problem for models to get better is the lack of data. I think, how do you respond? I do not work for Google. But I do really appreciate their tool. I think what I would say, the companies would do, or their perspective is to find ways to train materials on the materials that exist within an enterprise. So if you think of all the stuff in your organization that's on your knowledge base, on your SharePoint sites, on your in your emails, all of those spots. That is plenty of data for a large language model to be trained on, and is something that is, I think some teams who are actually building these things are doing it.
Yeah. And
And
the one other thing, Patrick, I wanted to get it because when we talk about security, there's two things, right? One is like, am I giving it away? The other is like when you use a pro model, and this is important, you use Google Gemini's Pro. So Patrick has a login. He's going to log in using his account. That means his data is as protected as his password is, and as good as Patrick is with his data. So the only concern on an enterprise side, the question then becomes, if I'm Patrick and I want to put my company data into Gemini Pro, they're going to request that I'm logged in with their security protocols, right? Multi-factor authentication, single sign-on more than likely, with the idea being that Patrick's password that he gets via the company is better protected than his own personal password. So
Yeah.
those are really, when we look at those security concerns, again, there's much broader concerns, ethics, there's nature, right? Like environmental concerns, lots of those. We won't get into them, but the security, like the first one is it learning from you? Most of these have shut those down. And the second is how secure is the data? Again, if you're using it for your company, try to get it within your security environment. But it's only going to be as strong as your password. And
Mhm.
with that, we've got like 25 minutes left, Patrick. Let's
Yeah.
see, maybe we can
I,
get into this sample.
Yeah, I would love to. So we're going to use an example here today. I made this up, and so we're going to use a company called Finco. So Finco is an organization. I literally just made this up to help us with our demo. Finco is a financial services company. They have recently experienced a major cyber attack and are working to transform how their operation how transform their operations. During the process, what they found is that the folks at the director level, so folks at the senior level, have a very high rate of violations of their cybersecurity policy and do not know good cybersecurity practices. So we, in this example here, are working with the CIO team to build a web-based training for directors to help them reinforce the importance of cybersecurity and increase policy compliance. So that's a frame of reference we're going to use in our demo. Now let's go ahead and shift over. So I'm going to switch my screen. Just give me one moment, please. I just want to make sure I have the right screens open here. Give me one moment. Um, and while I am doing that, I will say, I am, let me just make sure that I have the right thing. I appreciate the comments in the chat. I'm happy to follow up with folks based on, for any comments afterwards. But as we go through here, I also want to mention, so I do teach a course. It's called it's called AI for HR as part of General Assembly, the L&D team. So if you're interested in learning more about that, please feel free to reach out as well. But also happy to follow up with questions in the chat as well. All right, so this is as we sort of start, this is an example of the Gemini tool. Let me just reorganize myself, and we are going to get started here by using these tools. So if we're sort of starting to move in to ask a tool like Gemini to build a web-based training course, I mentioned that the prompt that you use matters. So what I would say, so let's just try a prompt to see what it generates. I'd love to kind of get folks' thoughts in the chat as this product comes in. So I mentioned we're working with Finco, and I've been asked to develop this training solution. Great. Okay, so here's what I'm asking. I'm asking for a web-based training course in JavaScript, HTML for a large financial services firm. And let's put this in and see what we get here. So I will say my Gemini has been running a little slowly lately, so it is going to take a couple seconds. What you will notice in this what you will notice in this prompt is that we actually did not follow that CETO framework that I mentioned on the earlier slide. This just asked it to accomplish a task for me. I think what we are going to see in here is something that is maybe fine, but not particularly meaningful or not particularly insightful. It will be at something that is at a fairly high level, something that doesn't really include a ton of a ton of information, and will be something that can be fairly basic. I forgot to turn on what was known as the canvas, which allows you to actually see previews in here. So I am going to rephrase this prompt and see if we can get this in Canvas. Please put this page in. So what we're going to see is we are going to see a live version of the course in a second, and we can kind of do a quick critique on it.
And as that's building, Jose mentioned that he built a GPT with instructional design knowledge base. What you're seeing, and I have an example of it that we can share after. What you're starting to see in the field is these highly contextual agents that have been purpose built. So organizations are essentially preloading in instructional design knowledge, right? So like Infopro, the one I'll show, since we have like 500 instructional designers, we have an agent that just walks you through building a course design. So we'll kind of show what that looks like. This would be the opposite of that. This is just, putting in the prompt and hopefully getting an answer, but you'll see a little bit about what Jose is talking about later.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, what you see here, it's pretty basic. It has two modules, recognizing phishing and strong passwords and authentication. We got a little cute like icon here, so that's nice. But what the information that you're seeing here is, it's a good start, but I would say lacks really any type of detail. And I think that there's some, as you kind of like look through this, there are some things that I would really question from a learning experience, best practice, and certainly like the types of things that would typically be in a course like this. I maybe shifted this a little bit, but this gives you something to work with in terms of at least getting a prototype on the page. Nolan, to your point earlier around the terror of the blinking cursor, this is at least not that. What the problem is that a prompt that is as basic as this, which is similar to the types of prompts that people will typically ask for, that prompt is just not strong enough. A key question here that I mentioned was around a key issue that I mentioned earlier was around hallucination. So information that is not necessarily true. One way to avoid hallucination is to use a tool that's Notebook LM. So Notebook LM is, and you're looking at a screen, you're looking at that screen right now. This is an example of a way, it's a tool that Google offers where you can upload sources. You're looking at the sources that I have pulled around cybersecurity for our FinCo course. And what the tool does is it responds using these tools as our source documents. I know somebody mentioned RAGs in the comments earlier. This is an example tool that uses RAG databases, which is stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. It's a way to constrain the amount of information that a tool is using to get more accurate results. What's really cool about Notebook LM is you can put all of your sources in, and then you can ask questions around that where the tool uses only these pieces of information, only these pieces of information to respond. And so I could, for example, click this question, which is what are the most significant cybersecurity threats, and then it will go ahead and respond. A good use case for a tool like Notebook LM is something that if you are an instructional designer, but you're not an expert in a particular tool, this gives you the ability to learn and develop your own understanding so that as you're generating content from a space of more knowledge, maybe not as much knowledge as your subject matter experts have, but knowledge to be able to draft the content with more confidence. So it's a tool that enables you to do that. You can ask it questions. You're seeing, lots of response. This is a long response. I have actually asked it to create long responses for the purposes of this. But there are ways to, you can use that tool for that purpose. We're going to come back to Notebook LM as a tool. But what I wanted to show that tool is to demonstrate the ability to get the right content, to make sure that we have some good content that we can use to start getting better results. So I saw that there was a comment in earlier around, is this going to replace the course development phase? It can replace parts of those course development phases, but it's not going to replace everything. The goal, where I see the most value for a tool like this is, is to get something on the page that then you can iterate. You always need that human oversight and that human editing, but Gemini can get enough on the page where you can sort of approach the problem as a editor, not as a writer. So let's go ahead and actually start with a key step in the instructional design process, which is to design the learning objectives. So I have a prompt here that I have written. I'm going to show the prompt because that's probably easier to see here. So here's where I'm using that CETO framework. So I'm starting with the context. I am saying, what we're doing. I'm talking about the audience for this course. I'm also talking about some documents that I'm going to upload into Gemini for the purpose of this analysis. I then ask it to act as a particular persona, apply the characteristics of a particular persona. I'm giving it a task. I'm asking it that I need to use a needs assessment to use a needs assessment to draft learning objectives. And I also describe what the learning objectives should look like. I am pulling this from a guide that I've used from Harvard University. For those organizations, for those L&D organizations, you probably have a set of standards around what's a good learning objective, what's a good needs assessment, how are the ways that you as a team prefer, what does a good learning product look like for you? Those are the tools that you really use in your day-to-day work and upload and use in this purpose. And then I'm giving it the output. This is how I actually want to see the output. So let's go back to Gemini. So I've just pasted this in. I'm going to go ahead and upload the relevant documents. I have organized these documents to make it easier to move, to kind of upload as we go through. But what you're seeing is, Gemini uploads the documents. It will automatically analyze it. The Word documents here that I've included are the summaries that I generated from Notebook LM in that last window. And then I'm including a document from Harvard University on writing good learning objectives. So I've given it a bunch of information. I've constrained its view, and I've given it a specific task using that CETO framework. Now let's see what what it comes out with. And as I do that, I'm going to take a look at some of the comments here. In terms of the types of sources that you can upload, web pages, PDFs, courses. Courses, I would say you can include like PowerPoint files and things like that. I don't think it would take like zip drives, or if you have like SCORM files or things like that, like videos and stuff like that. I don't think it would include. I'm assuming that you're talking about Gemini. Notebook LM does allow a very wide version of documents that it will ingest. Okay, so now we're looking at some the learning objectives here. I would ask the group, as you're reading through this, put your instructional design hat on for a second. And give me just sort of a, if you're a member of your team gave you some basic information about this FinCo course and sort of propose these learning objectives, then how would you rate this? Would you say good, bad, needs work? Like, what are your thoughts looking at these learning objectives and how they are formatted? Does this give you something to work with? What would be your review? Feel free to put it in the chat. And while folks are reading, Nolan, curious to hear, your thoughts as well. Joy says feels vague. Yeah. Um, Good start, but not smart. Yeah, Lori,
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. Good start, but not final. To the point earlier, it is a way to get something on the page.
Yeah.
Um, and as you think of how you lead your teams and how you do some of your work, often the biggest hurdle is getting something just written. Um, getting something there that you can really iterate on. So these tools, that's their real benefit, and that's what they can really allow you to do.
And and one of the things that I, always kind of reflect on is I say, listen, whatever it like getting, here, that this is obviously not the best. You could do a lot
Hmm.
more. But how long would it have taken you to get here? And
Yeah,
then think of how much time it would take to iterate this to make it perfect, right? Maybe
yeah,
10% extra work. And so I think that's for me, that's always the key is, yeah, I don't love what it comes out with, but I got there 90% faster.
yeah.
Now I only got to take 10%. Um,
Hmm.
so I don't know. I think some people judge AI more critically than they judge people, which I don't quite understand. They think, oh well, it's not perfect, so we can't use it. And it's like, is everybody you work with perfect? And do you fire
Yeah.
everybody who's not? Like, probably not.
Yeah. No, it's a good point, and I'll say, a couple points just to kind of think through here. I think it is I actually think you should be really critical of these tools. They are
Yeah.
they are tools. They're not people. This is a toaster. And I think you can ask it and you can say, no, this is what I'm looking for. Um, I see somebody above mentioned that they were not that they didn't that the tools don't follow the learning objectives don't follow the SMART framework, which is awesome. I'm glad that somebody found that out. I explicitly did not ask it to do that. In the guide that I provided from Harvard University, it does not mention SMART objectives. I personally like using that framework myself, and I was curious if it would just do that on its own. It did not. So that's the thing where you kind of think of like, what's the difference between a writer and an editor? That's the thing where you'd really want to kind of constrain it and then like use that as your like kind of
And
editorial lens.
yeah, and I know we have to hop on to the next one, but really there are a couple of people that have talked about, Dan Russ said I'm not a SME, but it looks pretty good. If I was a
Hmm.
SME, I might be more discerning. Maria just said, what if you're a student? And somebody had said, does it have the SMART goals? Well, I think
Yeah.
it's a key point to point out that actually one of the considerations of using Gen AI is who uses it.
Mm.
If you don't know what those things are, it will not do it,
Yeah.
nor will the person using the tool learn it. So if you give the person the tool who doesn't know instructional design principles, they cannot ever look at this and say it's right or it's right. Again, it's a golden retriever puppy. It just wants to please you. It's going to give it to you. If you don't know the question to ask,
Yeah.
it's not going to give it to you. And so there is a bit of a, if you have people joining your organization, and they're showing this already that as people use AI more, they're losing that ability to develop that mental muscle to discern and think on their own because they're allowing the tool to try to do their critical thinking for you. So it really that is an important point is the more of an expert you are, the better the tool you can use because the human element of human plus AI is more powerful. But if you give this to somebody who's new, the AI is going to be 99% of what you get, and the humans
Yeah.
1% because they just simply don't know.
Yeah. Jose, I know I want to show one more tool, one more thing very briefly if
Yeah.
we can. But Jose, your comment in here for now, AI is not a magic wand. It's a tool, a partner, a smart, fast partner that can guide, suggest, and discuss. I can't think of a better way to describe this tool. That's a really um, insightful way to think about it. I'm going to go ahead and share the prompt library so that you can kind of use this and try this on your own. We are skipping a few steps here. I did want to kind of show an example of what the of the an example tool. And give me 1 second. I just need to move something around. So, I did ask it in a previous version to actually go ahead and create this course. And what it did was it wrote its own code for me in HTML. It created an example. These buttons sort of work. This was, these are some of the materials. It was trained on the materials that I provided it. This is the end. This is the end of the prototyping process, and this is something that I think you can kind of think to bring to to your team, to your stakeholders, to get a very quick view of what a tool like this would look like. We're going to skip a lot of the steps to create that, but the prompt library gives you the recipe to go ahead and do that. You can go ahead and run that on your own. Actually, ask the prompts in that order, and that is a really cool example of what it can do. I also want to kind of go back to our Notebook LM. So Notebook LM also allows you to show and create content based on the materials. A new tool that Notebook LM has is what's called a video overview. So you can ask it, you can use it for this information, ask it some questions, and ask it to generate a video for you based on the sources that you provided. I am going to, I'm going, I'm not going to include the audio on here. So what this does though is it generates an audio of like a video, sort of an explainer type video that you can use you can use that as part of your programs. You can use that as a way to augment your training, or you can use it in place of your other learning assets. So after the WBT is completed, maybe this is a recap video that you can send to people. That's another tool that exists here. There's also an audio overview that will generate a podcast that will describe these tools. These are just the beginning of some of these things, and we're starting to see them more and more. So, really, I would encourage you, as I would just kind of take away something from you, if you would take away something from this, I would encourage you to try the prompt library that I mentioned. Diane, it's just a set of prompts that I use to generate these types of courses. I will go ahead and send that to you so you can just copy those and input those directly into your large language model of choice and see what you get. But, I will say, Jose, I think you summed it up better than anyone. These are a partner, and I encourage you to figure out how you can partner with this to do less of the drudgery, less of the administrative work, less of the stuff that is not a great use of your time, and more of the time of the stuff that really engages and drives value for you and your organizations. So, Nolan, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. And Patrick, if you could also share, you were talking about Notebook is free, by the way. There's somebody that asked, and the free version does not train the model based off of what you share with it. So Notebook LM actually keeps all of your information just your own. So feel free to use that. You had shared that there was a program that you offered that helped educate people on this. Maybe if you want to share a link
That's
to
right.
that or something, that would be great.
Yeah.
Since I refuse to let Patrick one up me on giveaways, This is something that we do at Infopro Learning. We call it a content development pilot. So we actually we kind of do what we did today, but we use a couple different tools. We use Colossian, which is kind of a video simulation tool. We do use Notebook LM for some podcasts. So if you are interested in what does it look like to take a piece of content and only use AI to create an output, we created this pilot program. I've cut the price. You can see here I did this very last minute just with my little mouse, changed it to $1,000. So good there. So really thanks everybody for joining. I know everybody has to leave. I'll actually put down an email you can send if you want to engage in that pilot. You can do that. Really, and Patrick, thanks for doing that. This was purely on a whim that Patrick and I decided to do this, and the engagement, the insight has been great. I think we have to do another one.
For sure. No, I mean, there's a lot in, I skipped a lot of stuff around some of the
Yeah.
errors that I was seeing, but yeah, for folks who are interested in coming to the next one, let us know. We would love to continue this conversation.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, absolutely. Just drop, yeah. If you wanna do this again, put yes or something. We'll take that as a good response, and maybe we'll think of the next topic and do one in the near future. Well, I know everybody is leaving. We have to leave. Thank you, everybody, so much for attending. It went better than I could have expected. Thanks all. We'll connect with you all shortly. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.